Welcome, everyone. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Whether day or night, your moment sets the perfect stage for this adventure. On a bleak and blustering afternoon, I found myself seated in the familiar clutter of 221B, Baker Street, watching my old friend Sherlock Holmes pore over a curious bundle of papers. His hawk-like eyes, usually so laser-focused, flickered now with an unusual intensity. A sharp knock at the door heralded the arrival of a stranger, a man with a furrowed brow and a clutch of letters in his hand. Introducing himself as Mr. Edmund Fawkes, a retired cryptographer from the War Office, he brought with him a matter both perplexing and urgent. "It's a cipher, Mr. Holmes," he said gravely. "A message I decoded from my late father's belongings, a message that may hide a secret worth killing for." Holmes leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Pray, tell us more, Mr. Fawkes." Edmund produced a faded letter, edges browned with age. The script was a tangled mesh of symbols and numbers, unmistakably a cipher. Below it, a single, chilling line was scrawled in crimson ink. "The truth lies beneath the crimson key." Holmes's eyes sparkled. A cryptogram, a key, and a hint of danger. "Watson, this promises to be a challenge worthy of our talents." Holmes spread the letter across the worn tabletop, his eyes scanning the cryptic characters with meticulous care. The symbols bore a resemblance to several known ciphers, yet bore enough differences to suggest a personalized encryption. "Fawkes, your father was clearly no amateur," I observed Holmes as he murmured to himself, tracing patterns with a finger. Minutes passed, then hours, and the room grew colder as London's fog thickened outside. At last, Holmes sat back. "The cipher is a variation of the Vigini code, but the key is not a word. It appears to be numerical, dates, perhaps." Edmund nodded, retrieving a leather-bound journal from his satchel. "My father kept detailed records of his service during the Great War. Perhaps the dates can guide us." Together, we pored over the diary entries. Each date unlocked a string of letters from the cipher, slowly revealing a fragmented message, references to a location in London, a clandestine meeting, and a name, Redcliffe. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Redcliffe, a district known for its shadowed alleys and forgotten docks. If this message points there, we must proceed with haste. The next morning, we took a hansom cab through rain-slick streets toward Redcliffe. The air was thick with the scent of brine and smoke. Narrow alleys wound between dilapidated warehouses, and the distant clatter of ship rigging provided a haunting soundtrack. Holmes's gaze was relentless as we reached an old tavern, the Crimson Anchor, its sign faded but unmistakable. Inside, the murmur of low voices mingled with the clink of glasses. "We must be cautious," Holmes whispered. The message warned of danger. Edmund approached the barkeep discreetly, mentioning his father's name. A shadowy figure nodded toward a back room. Inside, we found a small group huddled over maps and papers. Among them was a man matching the description of a Mr. Lawrence Harker, a known wartime spy believed long gone. Holmes stepped forward. "Mr. Harker, I presume?" "I am Sherlock Holmes, and these gentlemen are friends. We seek the truth behind the Crimson Key." Harker's eyes flickered with recognition and something deeper, fear. Harker's voice was low but steady as he spoke. "The Crimson Key is no mere phrase. It's a code name for a hidden cache of documents, secrets from the War Office that could topple governments if revealed." Holmes leaned in. "And your connection to these documents?" "I was the courier," Harker admitted, glancing nervously toward the door. "But when the war ended, the papers disappeared. Some say they were destroyed. Others claim they were hidden, waiting for someone clever enough to find them." Edmund's hands trembled. "My father believed the cache was real. He left clues behind because he feared the wrong people were after it." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Then the cipher is a map, and the crimson ink our beacon. We must find this cache before others do." Suddenly, a loud crash came from the tavern's entrance. Men burst in, rough, armed figures intent on intimidation. Holmes was calm but quick, pulling a revolver from his coat. "Watson, stand ready. We have company." The tavern erupted into chaos. Glass shattered and chairs overturned as the armed men advanced. Holmes fired a warning shot, and the sudden noise gave us the precious seconds to slip through a side exit. We dashed into the misty alleyways, hearts pounding. Edmund whispered, "They must be after the same secret." Holmes nodded. "Indeed. But they underestimate our resolve." We pressed on through the labyrinthine streets, guided by fragments of the cipher and Harker's fragmented directions. Finally, beneath an ancient, crumbling warehouse, Holmes found a loose stone in the cellar wall. With a quick push, a hidden compartment opened to reveal a rusted metal box. Inside, documents marked with crimson seals. Holmes smiled. The Crimson Key was literal, the seal on these papers. "The secrets are safe, for now." Carefully, Holmes pulled the documents from the box, spreading them out on the damp floor. The faded ink detailed covert operations, betrayals, and names of double agents who had influenced the course of the war, and the fragile peace that followed. "Look here, Watson," Holmes said, pointing to a list of names. "Many are still alive, some holding positions of power." Edmund's face was pale. "My father must have intended to expose these men. But why hide the papers so deeply?" Holmes pondered. "Because the truth is a double-edged sword. Dangerous in the wrong hands, yet vital for justice." Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the cellar entrance. The armed men had followed us. Holmes motioned to retreat. "We must get these papers to the authorities immediately." As we emerged into the cold dawn, the attackers closed in. But Holmes's plan was cunning. He had sent a discreet message to Inspector Lestrade, who arrived with a detachment of officers just in time. The men were arrested, and the cache secured. Holmes turned to Edmund. "Your father's legacy is safe, but remember, some truths must be handled with care." Edmund nodded, gratitude shining in his eyes. As we walk back through the awakening city, Holmes mused, a cipher, a crimson key, and a cache of secrets. This case reminds us all that even in the darkest times, light finds a way. Days passed, yet the echoes of the Crimson Key's case lingered in my mind. Holmes, however, seemed restless, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. One evening, as rain pattered softly against the windows of 221B, Baker Street, a sharply dressed woman entered our sitting room without invitation. Her eyes were steel grey, her expression unreadable. "I am Miss Evelyn Harrow," she said curtly. "I have reason to believe that the documents you recovered are but the surface of a far greater conspiracy." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "Pray, do explain." Miss Harrow produced a small leather notebook, worn at the edges. "I am a journalist, and the granddaughter of a man who once worked alongside your Mr. Harker. There are whispers of a secret society known only as the Crimson Order, who would kill to protect these secrets." Holmes tapped the table with a long finger. "Then our adventure is far from over. Holmes, Miss Harrow, Edmund, and I convened at Baker Street." The woman unfolded tales of coded meetings, shadowy figures, and unexplained disappearances. "Some say the Crimson Order controls London's underbelly," she said. "Politicians, businessmen, they all fear this hidden cabal." Holmes stroked his chin. "An organization so secretive it may never appear on any ledger." Edmund added, "My father mentioned cryptic warnings in his diary, letters signed only with a crimson seal." Our investigation now had a chilling new direction, exposing an entire secret society. The next day, Holmes and I accompanied Miss Harrow to a secluded bookshop on Fleet Street known for its rare and obscure tomes. There, amidst dust and whispering pages, we hoped to find references to the Crimson Order. The proprietor, a gaunt man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, regarded us with suspicion. Holmes produced a faded photograph from the cache, depicting a gathering of men and women, their faces partially obscured by shadows. "Do you recognize this assembly?" The bookseller's eyes flickered. "Perhaps. Such gatherings are rumored, but no proof exists in any record I know." We sifted through ancient manuscripts, searching for mention of the Order's symbols. Finally, behind a brittle leather-bound volume, we discovered a folded parchment, an intricately drawn crest featuring a crimson key entwined with thorny vines. Holmes's voice was grave. "This is no mere society, this is a lineage, a secret passed down with deadly consequences." Our next lead was a man named Tobias Crane, a former member of the War Office who had allegedly crossed the Crimson Order. Holmes arranged a meeting at a safe house on the outskirts of London. But when we arrived, Crane was gone, the room eerily bare save for a single crimson feather lying on the table. A note awaited us. "The truth can cost more than life itself. Beware the shadows you chase." Holmes frowned deeply. "They are watching us closely. Every step forward is met with resistance." Miss Harrow clenched her fists. "We must proceed regardless." for the truth, and those who fell seeking it. To follow the trail, Holmes proposed a nocturnal reconnaissance at Redcliffe Docks, where several suspected Order members were rumored to meet. Under cover of darkness, we prowled the mist-laden quays. Lanterns swung from rigging, casting ghostly shapes across creaking hulls. Suddenly, from a hidden alcove, muffled voices drifted to us, plans whispered of political upheaval and coded transmissions. Holmes motioned for silence and signaled to follow the men from a safe distance. As dawn threatened the horizon, we trailed the figures into the maze of city streets, edging ever closer to uncovering the Order's heart. The shadows of the dawn barely faded when we lost sight of the men near an abandoned textile mill, its brickwork crumbling and windows shuttered. Holmes crouched low behind a pile of crates, motioning for silence. "Watson, observe closely," he whispered. "These men are no ordinary criminals. They communicate in code, each phrase a key to another layer of their conspiracy." We watched as one man unfolded a large map dotted with symbols matching the Crimson Key crest we had seen earlier. Another pulled out a small device, an early cipher machine, its inner workings visible through a glass panel. Holmes's eyes gleamed. "They are preparing messages, encrypted and unbreakable without the proper key. Our first task is to intercept their communications." I could feel the tension in the air. This was no longer a simple case, it was a war of shadows, and the stakes were higher than ever. As we prepared to leave the docks, a figure emerged from the fog, an elegantly dressed man with a quick smile and eyes that hinted at secrets. "I believe you're looking for assistance," he said smoothly. "My name is Alistair Greaves. I too have reasons to see the Crimson Order dismantled." Holmes studied him carefully. "What proof do you offer that you are not part of this conspiracy?" Greaves produced a faded photograph of a woman, his mother, who had mysteriously vanished years ago, victim, he claimed, of the Order's cruelty. Though cautious, Holmes accepted his help. "Very well, Mr. Greaves. We shall see if your actions speak as loudly as your words." With Greaves' knowledge of London's underground passages, our next move was to infiltrate the Order's secret meeting place. Guided by cryptic clues in Penwell's diary and Harker's notes, we descended into a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the city. The air was damp and thick with dust, the walls lined with faded murals depicting keys and roses entwined. Holmes paused before an iron door, listening for sounds within. "Behind this door," he said, "lies the true heart of the Order, and possibly the answers we seek." We steeled ourselves and pushed it open. Inside the cavernous chamber, flickering torchlight revealed a circle of robed figures seated around a polished obsidian table. Their faces were shadowed beneath crimson hoods embroidered with golden keys. Holmes stepped forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You have secrets that threaten the very fabric of our society. It is time they were brought to light." A hush fell. One figure, taller than the rest, rose, a woman whose eyes glinted with icy resolve. "You meddle in matters beyond your comprehension, Mr. Holmes," she warned. "The Crimson Order safeguards peace by controlling chaos. Expose us, and you will unleash devastation." Holmes smiled thinly. Peace built on lies is a fragile thing. I am here to ensure truth prevails. The leader gestured, and two members advanced, skilled combatants trained in both blade and deception. Holmes, unarmed but unafraid, readied himself. "Words can be sharper than swords," he said. "But if it must be, so be it." The room erupted into a deadly dance. Holmes dodged and parried with uncanny agility, his mind calculating each move. Watson, from the doorway, prepared to intervene if necessary. After a tense exchange, Holmes disarmed both adversaries with a flourish. "Let this be a lesson," he said firmly. "Your power depends on shadows, but I am the light that will expose you." Holmes demanded the Order's archives be opened. Reluctantly, the leader acquiesced. Within dusty tomes and hidden compartments, we uncovered evidence, corruption, blackmail, and manipulation spanning decades. One document bore a signature, A.P. Arthur Penwell. Holmes looked at Edmund. "Your father was entangled with this society, perhaps unwillingly. He tried to escape their grip." Miss Harrow's voice trembled. "So the war secrets were just the beginning. The Order's reach extends far beyond." The weight of the revelations hung heavy in the chamber. Holmes' eyes narrowed, sifted through a bundle of letters marked with the crimson key seal. "Here," he said, extracting a folded note, a confession penned in haste. "Someone close to the Penwell family betrayed Arthur, delivering him into the Order's hands." Edmund paled. "But who?" Miss Harrow scanned the letters, then gasped softly. "This handwriting, it matches my grandfather's." Holmes's gaze sharpened. "A traitor within the family. The past now entangles the present." Outside, the Order members murmured uneasily. Their grip was slipping. Holmes warned us that the Order would not yield easily. "They will attempt to silence anyone who threatens them." We hurried back to Baker Street, planning our next move. Holmes contacted Inspector Lestrade to prepare a raid on the Order's known properties. Meanwhile, Miss Harrow and Edmund began compiling the evidence for public exposure. But as night fell, an ominous knock echoed through the flat. A messenger handed Holmes an envelope, inside, a single crimson feather and a note: "Cease your hunt, or your secrets become dust." Holmes's expression darkened. "They have begun their counterattack." With dawn breaking, Holmes, Lestrade, and a squad of officers stormed the Order's main headquarters, an imposing mansion on the Thames. Inside, the remaining members resisted fiercely, but the law prevailed. Holmes confronted the leader, now unmasked as a prominent politician. "Your reign ends today," Holmes declared. The politician sneered. "You may have won the battle, but the war for power never ceases." The Order's secrets were laid bare to the world. Many lives were altered, and justice was served to the guilty. At Baker Street, Holmes sat by the fire, pipe in hand. "Watson," he said quietly, "the shadows will always return, but so long as there are those who seek truth, they will never triumph. I nodded, grateful for his steadfast resolve. The city resumed its restless rhythm, but beneath its surface, the Crimson Key lay shattered, at least for now. In the weeks following the Order's downfall, the city buzzed with whispers of the secret society's influence. Newspapers ran exposés, Parliament debated reforms to prevent such conspiracies from rising again. Holmes, however, remained restless. "Watson," he said one evening, "the Order was but one thread in a much larger tapestry of deceit. Our work is far from over." That night, he examined a collection of letters seized during the raid. Some were coded, others referenced places and names unfamiliar to even him. Patterns within patterns, he mused. This is but the beginning. Our investigation led us next to the Whispering Gallery beneath St. Paul's Cathedral, a labyrinth of stone arches where secrets traveled in echoes. There, Holmes met an old informant named Felix, a former spy with a knack for disappearing when trouble came. Felix handed Holmes a slender envelope. Inside was a map pinpointing locations tied to the Order's wider network, ports, warehouses, even a private island. "This Order is global," Felix whispered. "Their reach extends beyond London." Holmes arranged passage aboard a cargo ship bound for the Isle of Falmouth, where the map indicated a hidden base. Watson and I accompanied him, our journey fraught with stormy seas and uneasy fellow passengers. At night, Holmes studied the stars and charts, piecing together the Order's clandestine routes used for smuggling and espionage. "Every mystery requires patience, Watson," he said. "Even when the waves threaten to swallow us whole." Upon arrival, the isle seemed deserted, save for the eerie cries of seabirds and the distant toll of a foghorn. We found an underground cavern concealed beneath cliffs, its walls lined with faded murals depicting the Crimson Key entwined with ivy and fire. Inside, caches of weapons, coded messages, and artifacts awaited, proof the Order intended to ignite unrest across Europe. Holmes's voice was low but fierce. "We have uncovered a powder keg. Now, we must extinguish the spark." Under the cloak of darkness, Holmes, Watson, and a small contingent of local constables planned a covert operation to dismantle the island's arsenal. The salty breeze carried whispers of danger as we navigated narrow tunnels, each step echoing ominously. Suddenly, shadows shifted, sentinels alerted to our presence. Holmes signaled silence and then sprang forward, disarming one guard with swift precision. The firefight was brief but intense. Holmes's calm under pressure turned the tide. By dawn, the Order's stockpile lay in ruin, its members captured or fled. Back in London, Holmes confronted the last puzzle, a cipher hidden within Penwell's diary, overlooked until now. The key was the pattern of crimson keys intertwined with roses, each symbol representing a letter. Hours passed as Holmes decoded the message, revealing names of co-conspirators hidden within government ranks. "It's worse than we feared," Holmes muttered. "Corruption embedded like a cancer." We prepared to deliver the evidence to the authorities, knowing it would shake the very foundations of power. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that not all allies were trustworthy. Miss Harrow received a letter threatening her silence, sealed with the Crimson Key. Edmund Penwell confessed his doubts about those close to us. Holmes's suspicions grew. "Trust is a luxury we cannot afford, Watson." The shadows closed in tighter, and the danger became personal. A mysterious figure observed Holmes from afar, never revealing their identity but lo! Each step toward unveiling the conspiracy was met with veiled threats and clever sabotage. Yet Holmes remained undeterred, driven by his relentless pursuit of justice. A letter arrived at Baker Street, penned in elegant yet unfamiliar handwriting. It was an invitation, no, a challenge, to meet at midnight beneath the arches of London Bridge. Holmes studied the note carefully. "Our silent watcher wishes to parley. The question is whether this is a trap or an opportunity." Despite my protests, Holmes insisted on attending alone, armed only with his keen intellect and a concealed revolver. The fog was thick, curling around the bridge like a ghostly serpent as Holmes disappeared into the night. At the appointed hour, Holmes found himself face to face with a woman shrouded in a dark cloak, her eyes shimmering like polished jet. "I am Elara," she whispered, voice laced with urgency. "I was once part of the Order but seek redemption." Holmes regarded her with wary curiosity. "I have information that could dismantle the remaining cells of the conspiracy," she said, extending a folded parchment. Holmes took it, the parchment revealing a list of safe houses and coded rendezvous. "Trust is earned," Holmes said slowly. "But this is a start." With Elara's aid, we launched coordinated strikes against the Order's hidden enclaves throughout London. Each operation yielded arrests and documents, tightening the noose around the conspirators. Yet with every victory, Holmes sensed the enemy's desperation growing. The final confrontation loomed like a gathering storm, promising danger unlike any we had faced before. One evening, Holmes received a cryptic message, a single line of poetry accompanied by a small, intricate clockwork key. The verse spoke of time running out and shadows consuming the light. Holmes examined the key and recognized it as part of an antique mechanism housed in the Tower of London. "The Order's last move is imminent," he declared. "We must act before the hour strikes midnight." Holmes, Watson, and I arrived at the tower under the cover of darkness, the ancient stones looming like silent sentinels. The intricate clockwork key felt heavy in Holmes's palm as he led us to a forgotten chamber beneath the clock tower. Inside, a massive mechanism of gears and levers awaited. Holmes carefully inserted the key into a hidden lock, triggering a low rumble as a concealed door slid open to reveal a trove of incriminating documents and a map marked with the words, "Final Gathering." "This is where they plan to make their last stand," Holmes whispered. "We must prepare for whatever awaits." News of the discovery spread quickly to Inspector Lestrade, who rallied a squadron of officers. Holmes coordinated a strategic siege of the Final Order stronghold, an abandoned manor on the outskirts of London. As we approached, a chilling wind howled through the skeletal trees. The manor's windows glowed faintly, like the eyes of some great beast waiting to strike. Holmes turned to us. This will be a battle of wits and will. Stay alert. Under moonlight, we advanced toward Ravenswood Manor. The air was thick with tension. Suddenly, figures emerged, masked and armed. A fierce skirmish erupted. Holmes led with precision, outmaneuvering the attackers and rallying the officers. In the chaos, Holmes and I slipped inside the manor, searching for the order's leader. In the grand hall, illuminated by flickering candlelight, we faced the leader, a man cloaked in crimson robes, his eyes burning with fanaticism. "You think you can stop the order?" he hissed. "Our cause is eternal." Holmes stepped forward calmly. "Your cause is built on lies and fear. It ends tonight." With a swift motion, Holmes disarmed the man. The remaining conspirators surrendered as reinforcements flooded the room. With the capture of the order's leader and the surrender of his followers, London slowly began to breathe again. The streets, once shadowed by fear and whispers, filled with cautious hope. Holmes stood beside me on the steps of Ravenswood Manor, his gaze distant but resolute. "This is but one battle in a long war against secrecy and corruption," he said. "But it reminds us that vigilance must never waver." Back at Baker Street, Holmes poured himself a glass of brandy and sank into his armchair. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering light on his thoughtful face. "Watson, these events have tested every skill and principle we hold dear." I nodded. "And yet, the city is safer because of your efforts." Holmes smiled faintly. "The game, as always, continues. Until the next mystery calls." Just as calm returned, the doorbell rang. A young woman, trembling and clutching a sealed envelope, asked for Holmes by name. "I have a case," she said. "One that could shake London to its core." Holmes took the letter, eyes narrowing. "It seems, Watson, that our work is far from done." As the night deepened, Holmes and I prepared for a new adventure, one shrouded in shadows and secrets yet to be uncovered. With a final glance at the glowing gas lamps outside, Holmes whispered, "To the curious and the brave, the city always offers a story." And so, the game begins anew. The young woman's letter was sealed with a peculiar emblem, an Ouroboros encircling a single black rose. Holmes's fingers traced the seal thoughtfully. "Miss Evelyn March," she introduced herself nervously. "My brother disappeared under strange circumstances, and the police refused to investigate." Holmes nodded, his interest piqued. "Tell us everything from the beginning." Evelyn explained that her brother, Thomas, had been investigating a series of disappearances linked to a shadowy organization called the Midnight Veil. Holmes's eyes glittered with determination. "Another secret society, Watson. And another mystery to unravel." Evelyn's tale grew darker as she described her brother's last known movements. Thomas had been seen frequenting a run-down tavern in Whitechapel, one notorious for its secretive clientele. Holmes and I wasted no time. The narrow, fog-choked streets of Whitechapel seemed to close in around us as we approached the Black Lantern, the tavern Evelyn had described. Inside, The air was thick with smoke and murmurs. Eyes flicked nervously as Holmes inquired about Thomas March. Most patrons denied knowing him, but a bartender with a wary glance slipped Holmes a folded note, a cryptic warning to cease the inquiry. Holmes's jaw tightened. "Watson, we tread on dangerous ground indeed." Back at Baker Street, Holmes unfolded the note carefully. The message was brief but chilling. "Curiosity is a blade that cuts both ways. Leave the past buried, or join the vanished." Holmes's eyes narrowed as he read aloud. "The midnight veil does not suffer fools gladly, Watson. Thomas March is already in peril. I voiced what we both feared, then we must act quickly." Holmes agreed. "Our first step, learn more about the Midnight Veil's operations and identify their members." Fortunately, Evelyn mentioned a name, Gregor Klein, a man rumored to be their enforcer. Holmes began assembling a plan to infiltrate their network, but the deeper we delved, the darker the mystery grew. Holmes and I traced Gregor Klein to a shadowy warehouse near the docks, a place where the fog mingled thick with the salty air. Klein was a tall, imposing figure, silent, watchful, and clearly feared by those around him. Holmes observed him for hours, noting the steady flow of visitors and coded signals exchanged. Klein's presence confirmed the Midnight Veil's reach extended far beyond what we imagined. Holmes whispered, "This man is both gatekeeper and executioner for the Veil. If we can turn him, we gain entry. If not, we risk everything." The challenge was clear: approach Klein without raising alarm, and discover what he knew of Thomas March's fate. After days of careful observation, Holmes devised a plan to approach Klein. Using a forged letter hinting at a valuable secret, Holmes arranged a meeting at a secluded tavern known only to London's underworld. The atmosphere was tense as Holmes sat alone, waiting. Moments later, Klein entered, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp as a hawk's. Holmes spoke calmly, "Mr. Klein, I believe we share a common interest, uncovering the truth behind the Midnight Veil's betrayals." Klein's gaze flickered, a hint of intrigue breaking through his stoic facade. "Speak your truth, then. But be warned, deception here is met with swift consequence." Holmes leaned forward, voice low. "Thomas March vanished after discovering the Veil's deepest secret. I want to know what he found." Klein studied Holmes, then nodded slowly. "Follow me. But trust comes at a price." Klein led us through a labyrinth of narrow alleys and shadowed corridors, deeper into the underbelly of London than I had ever ventured. The air grew colder, tinged with the scent of damp stone and secrets. At last, we reached a concealed door, marked with the same Ouroboros and black rose emblem from Evelyn's letter. Klein produced a key and unlocked it with a soft click. Inside was a chamber lit by flickering torches, walls lined with shelves of dusty tomes and curious artifacts. A circle of hooded figures stood awaiting us. "The heart of the Midnight Veil," Holmes whispered. One figure stepped forward, lowering their hood to reveal a sharp, pale face. "You seek answers. But beware, for truth here is both weapon and curse." Holmes held his ground. "We seek Thomas March, and the secret he uncovered." A tense silence fell before the figure spoke, voice cold but clear. "Then listen well, for your next steps will decide more than your fates." The figure's eyes gleamed in the torchlight as they spoke, their voice echoing softly through the chamber. Thomas March uncovered a plan centuries in the making, a conspiracy that entwines London's elite with shadows darker than you imagine. The Midnight Veil is but the surface of a deeper web. Holmes stepped forward. "What is this conspiracy? Who pulls the strings?" The figure smiled grimly. "Power, wealth, influence. They come not only from this city but from across the continent." Thomas sought to expose them, and for that, he was taken. Klein's expression hardened. "You have a choice: join us, learn the truth, or leave, and never speak of this again." Holmes's gaze never wavered. "We will do neither. We will bring this darkness to light." A murmur rose among the hooded figures. Before Holmes could respond, the chamber's heavy door slammed shut, locking with a final clang. The flickering torches cast long, dancing shadows as the hooded figures began to close in. Holmes' eyes flashed with determination. "Watson, to the windows," he whispered sharply. We sprinted towards the far side of the chamber, dodging the advancing figures. Klein moved with surprising agility, cutting a path for us as the others scrambled to intercept. Reaching the windows, Holmes seized a heavy iron bar and pried one open. Fresh night air rushed in, mixing with the scent of fog and danger. With a swift push, we climbed out onto the ledge. Below, the cobblestone alley stretched into darkness. "Hold steady, Watson," Holmes commanded. "We have escaped the lair, but the game is far from over." Once safely back in Baker Street, Holmes and I took stock of our narrow escape. The secret we had uncovered was more dangerous than anything before, and it was clear the Midnight Veil would not relent. A knock at the door interrupted our thoughts. Evelyn March entered, her face resolute. "I've found someone who may help us, an investigative journalist named Clara Vale. She's been tracking the Veil for years." Holmes raised an eyebrow. "An ally with fire in her heart and a pen sharper than any blade. We welcome her." Clara's arrival injected new energy into our pursuit. Together, the three of us began piecing together the fragments of a conspiracy that stretched from the fog-laden streets of London to the gilded halls of Europe's powerful. Clara Vale wasted no time. She spread out a series of articles, notes, and photographs on the table. "The Vale's influence extends into politics, finance, even law enforcement," she said. "I've traced several disappearances to a secret auction held quarterly, where secrets, people, and power are traded." Holmes examined a faded photograph of a masked ball, noting faces obscured by ornate disguises. The masks conceal not only identities but intentions. This auction may hold the key to unraveling the Veil's hold. Clara leaned in, whispering, The next auction is in 2 nights, at a manor outside the city. We must infiltrate it. Holmes nodded. Then we prepare our disguises and our wits, Watson. The heart of darkness awaits. On the evening of the auction, Holmes, Clara, and I arrived at the sprawling estate shrouded in mist. Guests in elaborate masks and sumptuous attire moved like shadows among the flickering lanterns. The air was thick with whispers and the faint scent of danger. Holmes surveyed the crowd, noting subtle signals exchanged beneath the surface gaiety. We split up, each tasked with uncovering clues. Clara slipped into the library, Holmes mingled near the ballroom, and I observed the guarded entrance where crates marked with strange symbols were unloaded. Suddenly, Holmes's sharp voice cut through the murmur. "Watson! Clara! I've found something!" Holmes led us to a concealed compartment behind a tapestry in the library. Inside lay a dusty leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with names, dates, and cryptic notations. This, Holmes explained, records the transactions and secrets exchanged at the auctions, proof of the veil's reach and power. As we studied the ledger, footsteps approached. A masked figure entered the room, eyes narrowing at our intrusion. Holmes quickly pocketed the ledger. "We must leave, now." We slipped through a hidden passage, hearts pounding as the masked figure pursued us into the shadows. We raced through the winding corridors beneath the manor, the echo of our pursuers' footsteps growing louder. Clara's quick thinking led us to a narrow servant's exit, just as the masked figure lunged forward. A sharp turn and a hastily barred door slowed our pursuer, buying precious seconds. Outside, the cold night air was a stark contrast to the manor's suffocating secrets. Holmes paused, catching his breath. "That ledger is the key, Watson. It links the veil to influential figures across Europe." Clara nodded grimly. "And they'll stop at nothing to retrieve it." The stakes had never been higher. Our next move would be decisive. Back at Baker Street, Holmes examined the ledger under gaslight, cross-referencing names with known figures in London society. "See here, Watson," he said, pointing to a series of coded entries. "This corresponds to letters sent to a mysterious femme, someone pulling strings behind the scenes." Clara sifted through a stack of intercepted letters she'd acquired. "I believe M stands for Marcus Vane, a diplomat with a penchant for secrecy." Holmes tapped his fingers thoughtfully. "If Vane is involved, then the conspiracy reaches the very halls of power." We resolved to confront Vane, but the question lingered, would we find an ally or a deadly foe? We arranged to meet Marcus Vane at a quiet cafe near the Thames at dawn, a place where whispered conversations went unnoticed amidst the city's early bustle. Vane arrived precisely on time, a man of refined bearing and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Holmes greeted him with his usual calm. "Mr. Vane, your name appears repeatedly in a ledger connecting you to the Midnight Veil. We seek to understand your role." Vane smiled thinly. "I am a man bound by duty and discretion. The veil is but one thread in a complex tapestry." Holmes leaned forward. Then help us unravel it, or we expose it. Vane's gaze flickered with conflict. You tread dangerous ground. But perhaps, if we work together, some light can pierce the darkness. Vane agreed to cooperate, but his terms were cautious. I can provide information, but we must move carefully. The Veil's influence extends deep into government and intelligence. Holmes nodded. We understand the risks. But the truth must prevail. Over the next days, Vane revealed hidden connections, including covert meetings in foreign embassies and a shadowy council known only as the Crescent. Clara and I gathered evidence while Holmes pieced together the puzzle. Yet, despite our progress, an unsettling feeling lingered. Someone among us might still be watching, waiting to strike. One evening, as we reviewed documents in Baker Street, Holmes's keen eyes caught an anomaly, a subtle pattern in Clara's reports that didn't quite add up. "Watson, there is a shadow within our circle," Holmes murmured. "Someone feeding information back to the Veil." Clara's face paled, but she maintained composure. "I swear, I am loyal to our cause." Holmes stood abruptly. "Trust must be earned anew. We proceed, but with caution." That night, we set a subtle trap, a false lead planted within our next planned move. If the Veil's spy took the bait, we would know who to confront. The following day, we circulated false intelligence suggesting that a key meeting would occur at an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Holmes, Clara, and I stationed ourselves in the shadows, waiting. Hours passed with only the sound of the river and distant foghorns. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the mist, moving deliberately toward the meeting spot. Holmes stepped forward, voice low but commanding. "Stop right there." The figure froze, then slowly removed their mask, revealing an unexpected face, Evelyn March. Her eyes flickered with regret. "I had no choice. They threatened my family." Holmes's expression softened. "We understand the weight of sacrifice. Now, you must help us end this." Evelyn's confession weighed heavily in the dim light of Baker Street. She revealed how the Veil had ensnared her family in debts and threats, forcing her into reluctant complicity. Holmes listened intently. "Your knowledge is invaluable. With your help, we can dismantle the Veil's network from within." Clara and I exchanged glances. Trust was fragile, but the cause demanded unity. Together, we planned a final operation targeting the Crescent Council's next gathering, the core of the Veil's power. The stakes were higher than ever, but with Evelyn's insider insight, we held hope. The gathering was set to occur beneath the city, in the cavernous ruins of an old Roman amphitheater, chosen for its secrecy and symbolism. Holmes, Clara, Evelyn, and I descended through a forgotten sewer tunnel, every step echoing against ancient stone. Torches lined the chamber where robed figures gathered in a circle, murmuring in Latin phrases and cryptic codes. Holmes whispered, "The Crescent Council." 10 of them, all leaders in their domains. Evelyn pointed out the high seat. "That's Corwin Hale. He leads the Veil now." Holmes nodded. "Then that is where this ends." We crept closer, the moment of reckoning drawing near. Holmes stepped forward from the shadows, voice firm and clear. "Corwin Hale, your counsel is ended. The truth has come to light." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council members surged to their feet, hands going to concealed weapons. But Clara and I leveled revolvers, and Evelyn raised a flare, signaling Inspector Lestrade and his waiting officers above. A thunderous crash followed as Scotland Yard descended through hidden entrances. Hale sneered at Holmes. "You think you've won? Shadows never die." Holmes replied, "No, but they retreat before the dawn. And dawn has come." One by one, the council was arrested. The veil was no more, or so we hoped. In the days that followed, London buzzed with rumour and Evelyn, granted leniency for her part in bringing the council down, disappeared quietly to the countryside. Clara resumed her journalistic work, her articles igniting public calls for reform. Holmes and I sat once more at Baker Street, the familiar aroma of pipe smoke drifting lazily in the air. "There will always be another web, Watson," Holmes mused. "But for now, one strand has snapped." I raised my glass. "To light in dark places." Weeks passed. The city slowly resumed its rhythm, though forever altered by the truths uncovered beneath its surface. Holmes grew quiet again, as he often did after a case of great magnitude. He spent long hours at his chemistry table, or gazing out the window, violin in hand. One evening, I found him rereading the final entries in Evelyn's letter of thanks. "You've done something extraordinary," I said. He glanced up. "We only trimmed one shadow. But that may be enough." Outside, a fog rolled in, familiar and thick. But this time, it carried no dread. It was simply London, breathing,